Like all of you, I look forward to what our speakers and you here have to say about the critical issues facing us and what we can do to rebuild our economy and our democracy. It is my pleasure now to introduce our keynote speaker, David Korten. David Korten is a co-founder and board chair of Yes Magazine, one of the most hopeful, uplifting magazines I've ever seen. He is also co-chair of the New Economy for Working Group, president of the People-Centered Development Forum. His books, there are many, on economics and world well-being, include Agenda for a New Economy, From Phantom Wealth to Real Wealth, The Great Turning from Empire to Earth Community, and the international bestseller, When Corporations Rule the World. His books will be available for purchase out in the lobby, and he will also sign your books if you wish. Please join me in welcoming Dr. David Korten.
Thank you. Whoa. I am thrilled to be here. Such energy. Amazing group. Let this be a historic gathering here on the Olympic Peninsula. We're here to advance a great American awakening, the end of the American nightmare, and a rebuilding of the American dream for all Americans. It begins right here on the Olympic Peninsula and in the Puget Sound. So let's get right to the point. Our economy's in a shambles. The financial crash born of Wall Street excess has stripped tens of millions of honest, hardworking, and talented Americans of their jobs, homes, and retirement assets, and plunged many into poverty and despair. As bad as conditions are for white people, they're far worse for people of color, and particularly for young people just entering the labor force already in debt bondage to Wall Street banks for their student loans. I see a nod out there. Poverty has risen to a near 30-year high. The only social mobility is downward. Millions lack health insurance, schools are failing, prison populations are swelling, American workers put in more hours than workers in any other high-income country at the expense of their family, health, and community life. Employment security is a thing of the past. Wages of working people are stagnant because a few Wall Street CEOs and financiers have used their political power to game the system to their advantage. They use free trade agreements, free in quotes, to outsource jobs, to bust unions, push down wages, so they can capture all the productivity gains as bonuses to accumulate grand fortunes. While families dependent on wages that don't cover basic necessities are forced into debt bondage to the bankers who hold their credit card and mortgage debt in order to put food on their tables. Obscene inequality has been growing in the United States for more than 30 years and is unraveling America's social fabric, and the existing economic structures guarantee that without a radical system restructuring, inequality can only get increasingly worse. Finally, a Wall Street-cultivated addiction to endless, mindless economic growth and consumption to grow corporate profits is disrupting Earth's climate patterns, reducing Earth's capacity to support life, and creating large-scale human displacement that further fuels social breakdown, even as billions of the world's people struggle to obtain basic necessities. That's the big picture. These are rather clear symptoms of a failed economic system. That's key, a failed system. Both a failed economic system and, as we increasingly see, a failed political system that facilitates the economic failure and is incapable of resolving it. A solution requires far more than simply electing politicians who have a D beside their name to replace Republicans who have politicians who have an R beside their name. Yes, it does require a progressive tax system and Wall Street regulation, but that's only part of the answer. A real solution requires a deep economic restructuring to replace the failed institutions of the Wall Street economy with the institutions of strong Main Street economies. The process begins with a framing story that identifies the source of the system failure in the public mind. We need a story that helps people focus on the real issue, and a story that frames the path to the solution, which brings me to the subject of my presentation: how to liberate America from Wall Street rule. I see we're ready to get to work. Now, please note that what I'm covering here, there's an incredible number of issues, many more than I can talk about here. They are covered in my books, and particularly because they're being sold out here by this amazing local Port Angeles bookstore, Port and News, I hope that you will patronize their, their store afterwards. Several of these books have discussion guides that you can find on my website, livingeconomiesforum.org. Part of our work is to engage our communities in conversations about these systemic issues and how they connect together. At the core, it comes down to values and power. Values and power. The fate of America turns on the outcome of a contest between forces aligned between two competing economic systems with dramatically different values, structures, and agendas. One is the greed-driven, money-serving, corporate-ruled Wall Street economy that measures its success exclusively by the financial profits it generates for the already rich. It neither acknowledges nor accepts responsibility for the economic, social, and environmental devastation that it leaves in its wake. The other economy is comprised of the democratic, community-rooted, market-based, life-serving Main Street economies that ordinary people are rebuilding across the nation and around the world. This emerging new economy measures its success by its contribution to securing adequate and meaningful livelihoods for everyone in balanced relationship with nature. The foundational issues are not rocket science. This is economics that we can all understand. Basically, just good common sense based on good traditional values. Now, the differences between these two economies trace directly to their contrasting models of ownership. The Wall Street economy features the absentee ownership of footloose, publicly traded corporations for which short-term financial profit is the sole measure of performance. Economic and political failure starts here, with absentee ownership of footloose, publicly traded corporations. And think about it. Clear in this audience that many of us are on retirement programs. Many of us in here own one or more corporations, at least technically. But do you have any idea what corporations you actually own or what they're doing? This is the ultimate absentee ownership. It's not about a guilt trip. This is just understanding the nature of this system dynamic. It is a dramatic contrast to the Main Street economies that feature the responsible living ownership of locally rooted businesses by people who care about the health and vitality of their community and its natural prosperity. Real prosperity begins here. So this ownership issue is key. Now, as to the ruckus about the budget deficit. America is far from broke. In fact, money literally rules America, and Wall Street is awash in it and is highly adept at using it to hold both corporations and governments hostage to its narrow short-term financial interests. Our largest banks and corporations are in fact sitting on record amounts of idle cash in the trillions of dollars for which they can't even figure out what to do with it. And beyond their PR BS, these banks and corporations have no interest in creating jobs, no interest in educating American children, or assuring that Americans have health care and secure retirements. But they appeal for ever more tax breaks and regulatory relief so that they can have yet more money on hand to use as they use their taxpayer-provided bailout money to increase their bonuses, pay dividends, buy other companies, buy back their own stock, and look for opportunities to create new financial bubbles and outsource more jobs. And there's no mystery why Medicare and Social Security are under attack. Medicare is a threat to the profits of Wall Street's insurance corporations. Couldn't be more simple than that. And ending Social Security to force us all to depend for our retirement on Wall Street managed investment accounts will add trillions of dollars to Wall Street profits and bonuses. You know, again, no rocket science here. Markets work well for some things, particularly markets comprised of human-scale, community-based businesses that operate within a framework of community values. Like, for example, a farmer's market, or most of the locally owned Main Street businesses. But when we need to get together to pool risk to achieve health and retirement security for all Americans, it is a very bad idea to give the job to private for-profit corporations owned and controlled by Wall Street interests devoted only to extracting as much profit as possible. A for-profit insurance company maximizes its profits by denying coverage to people with medical problems, increasing premiums for those it insures, and denying claims, practices for which our private insurance companies have become notoriously famous. Mutual insurance companies organized as cooperatives owned by their policyholders used to do that insurance job fairly well until Wall Street took them public. Our best current solution is a single-payer system administered by a democratically accountable government, essentially a form of national-scale cooperative ownership.